All right, Barbara Comstock will be joining us in a few moments. A couple of months ago in that race, we made a decision editorially on the John Fredericks Show to endorse Shaq Hill for Congress. Shaq Hill challenging Barbara. Number of reasons, but that was a decision we made. Since that time, no, things have changed, and anybody that knows me knows that I respond to different facts, and I'm not afraid to admit when I made a mistake. So I've changed on things as facts come in. And Shaq Hill, unfortunately, has made some outrageously outlandish charges against Barbara that we don't think are fair. But then beyond that, look, anybody can have an opinion, that's fine. But then the other thing is he came on my show and really misrepresented some things. I'm going to use that word, misrepresented, that Barbara should or shouldn't do. But by law, she couldn't do it. But he didn't say that. So, he made it sound like he had the facts. He didn't. And he either lied to my listeners on my radio show or he didn't know what he was talking about. Either one is not good when you're running for federal office. So as a result of that, we have de-endorsed Shaq Hill, and we have withdrawn that endorsement. So I just wanted to be clear with everybody so you know where I stand on it and what the deal is with that. In the meantime, that race will go on. It'll be decided in June primary in the 10th District in 2018. Now, having said that, let's get Barbara on with us. Joining us now, Congressman 10th District, Northern Virginia, Barbara Comstock. Representative Comstock, good to have you with us today.
Good morning. Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners. Great to be with you.
All right, Barbara, thank you. Good to have you on with us. I know it's been a while. Hey, I'm really excited about this tax package, this tax reform bill, historic, that got passed yesterday for the second time in the House. Thoughts on it? I mean, you voted for it obviously 2 times, and I appreciate that. What are your thoughts on what you think this tax cut is going to do for middle-class Americans, Barbara, and for the economy?
Well, first, it's really a return of the pro-growth Republican, principles that I've always supported, by lowering the business tax rates, because there was a bipartisan consensus for years now that our business taxes were too high. When we try and compete around the world, businesses were leaving here because you had lower rates over in some countries in Europe, and we have to compete. So by lowering the business taxes, you've already seen companies giving bonuses, companies talking about growing their plants here and other things. So I think you're really going to see a lot of growth, and that will help on the job, not just on the job front, but improving the job that you already have and upgrading things, and that'll be exciting to see that type of growth. And then secondly, it is a pro-American jobs, but then also a pro-family bill, because the $2,000 child tax credit, that's something that a lot of us had worked on for years. Back when I worked for Congressman Wolf in the 90s, I was part of the contract with America to put the $500 child tax credit in. Then President Bush, George W. Bush, did a $1,000 credit. And one of the first things that I wanted to do when I came into Congress, and I introduced legislation to do it in last session, was to double the child tax credit. Did that again this Congress. So I'm thrilled that that's included, and it also will be provided both for lower income families, by working families, by allowing them to, it's refundable. So you have up to $1,400 is refundable, and then it goes up higher up the income scale, because up here in Northern Virginia, in my district, you have 2-earner families that it's costly to pay for child care to live in this area. So 2-earner family can make over what the limit was to use it in the past. So this new $2,000 child tax credit will be available to a lot more families. And there's a lot of other things that I know you've been going through that I'll be happy to discuss.
Well, listen, Barbara, the Democrats and their legacy media B-52 bomber friends have been lying about this tax cut now for 2 months. I mean, it's just nonstop lies. They keep telling you it's not a tax cut for the middle class, that it's going to blow up the deficit, as if they're deficit hawks all of a sudden. But they've been lying to you about it. And now come the end of January and the beginning of February, 85% of Americans, by all estimates, are going to pay less taxes. 85%. That is a huge number. coming in February, people are going to start to see an increase in their take-home pay. And they're going to be like, what is this? Barbara, is there a coming day of atonement here for the Democrats, a day of reckoning with the fact that they have been lying to the American people about this tax cut, saying that it isn't? Is there a day of reckoning where they're going to have to answer to this?
Well, listen, you've not had Democrats promote tax cuts since President Kennedy in the 60s, and those worked out well. President Reagan followed that, and, this is in that same vein. The other thing is, over the past few weeks, we worked hard on making this version of the tax bill better than, I think, either the House bill or the Senate bill. It improved things like the state and local tax in our area so that you can use the full $10,000 deduction for state and or local or property taxes, so whatever you need to use it for. Now, I'd like to see it higher. I will continue to work to see that higher. I also don't think anyone should have to pay more than a third of their income to the federal government. So I'd like to see the top rates, all the rates a little lower, but we lowered it at every rate, got lowered. And the brackets, people will be paying less all up the income scale. And then things like the student loan deduction, the teacher deduction, for the supplies that we heard a lot about, medical expenses, people who have high medical costs, those were put back in the bill. So a lot of these things that people were sort of running campaigns on, we sat down and talked, and people worked together on it, and we a lot of those got back in there. And then we had things that people didn't know about, like the opportunity zones that are going to help in low-income, distressed areas to get investment in there so that people will, get businesses to come in there as part of this, growth economy that we're going to be kicking into gear here.
Well, the bottom line is if you're itemizing your taxes, and about 30% of Americans do itemize right now, there's very little change to anything. You can go and continue to itemize to your heart's content. There's a few minor changes, but if you own a home and two homes in 2017, nothing changes. It doesn't change until you buy a different home in 2018 as far as what the cap is. You're still going to be able to deduct up to $10,000 of your state and local income taxes along with your property taxes. You combine that in any way you want. So people are going to have to decide what's better for them, like they always do with itemization. But the other thing it's going to do is, of the 30% people that are itemizing now, Congresswoman, by all estimates, that's going to get cut by almost 2/3. So you're going to have 8 or 10% people itemizing. Everybody else is just going to send in the standard form, which they're going to be able to do in about 20 minutes. So the other thing that nobody's talking about is the fact that this really is going to simplify the tax code. Now, yesterday... sorry. Go ahead.
It also preserves, as you mentioned, the 401k deductions. I think it even there's some modest improvements there, too, for promoting savings in retirement. And when you look at an area like mine, lots of people have 401ks. Every federal government employee has a 401k. So when you see growth in the economy like we've seen for the past year, every person is part of that growth. And we want to get more people, saving and investing and then experiencing the growth in the economy that we're going to have in the coming years with this pro-growth, effort in this bill.
There's no question about it. This is a pro-growth bill. The economy is going to grow. It's going to expand. Congresswoman, I want to get to bonuses that were announced yesterday by two big companies. I guess Comcast and AT&T. They're going to be paying their employees more money based on the fact that they like the tax cut, and they're going to be able to pay less money going forward so they could free up some dollars and give that to their employees. And the Democrats were belittling that. What did you make of that?
It's just bizarre. We should be happy for anybody who's seeing their wages increased and seeing companies reinvest in their employees. We know that's, when we bring jobs back here and we have more competition, there's going to be more competition for those employees too. And that's going to mean, investing in them, upgrading their skills, and that's going to mean higher wages for them and their families. And like I said, the 401ks too. So, or if you have an IRA, if you're in a small business and they don't have an investment plan, you can, invest some of your own money, make sure you're in this growth market. So, how anyone could not be happy for people to be able to get more money in their pockets, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I think we're going to continue, and I know as I talk to businesses, they want to grow their businesses here in this country. They want to, if you're an American company, you want to see it grow, in your neighborhood, in your community. And then those people give back to their communities and invest, and help those who are, less fortunate. And it's a virtuous cycle, and I think that's what we'll be creating with this.
All right, if I could get for a second, Congresswoman Comstock, to a local issue affecting many people in the Washington, D.C. metro area, now where I am, and also Northern Virginia, your metro bill affecting the metro service. It's underfunded. Trains are always being delayed by things they need to get done. You have come up with a way to fund this that I think makes sense for everybody, and anybody that depends on Metro now, like I do every day, it's a big deal. Can you just elaborate to our audience what is in your Metro bill and why you think that works best?
Well, sure. We worked on this for over a year with a lot of people who had been, Democrats and Republicans who had really worked on these Metro issues before, and it's sort of the biggest Metro reform since the inception of Metro, and it would create a Metro reform board, kind of like we had to do in the District of Columbia back in the 90s, and it would be an interim control entity that really can force the needed reforms that will bring the costs down and that will make it a more business-like operation, and that it'll be based on, performance, like you're getting you to your place on time, making sure it is safe because we've had a lot of safety problems, and it'll provide money as the carrot to make those reforms, but you don't get the money unless these substantial reforms are made. Like we require switching from a pension system that exists now and a lot of overtime that then goes into the pension. And we're switching to a 401k system so that you won't have this excessive overtime that gets put into the pension and then jacks up the legacy costs for a system. We are going to, allow for, more outsourcing in terms of the contracting so that you can get better and more competitive prices for repairs or for, fixing the escalators and all kinds of things. And then, we want to allow this reform board to really look at transit business reforms that will allow the system to operate better, put more on the front lines of the system, repairing it, making it efficient, making sure the upgrades are made in a timely manner, and less sort of in the back rooms where we have a lot of costly people who just aren't serving the system right.
Congresswoman, I know you've studied this issue and you're an advocate for Metro in the House of Representatives. Do you have a vision of any further Metro expansion that you would like to see?
At this time, it's extending into Loudoun, and that is,
right,
online to be finished. But I think right now we need to get the system working and efficient and safe and fulfill the obligations that we have now, and then see what the system is going to cost when we get it, operating in a business-like manner. And this provides substantial federal resources, but then will have to be matched from the localities, and then the localities will decide longer term. This is sort of a bridge loan and a way to reform the system and hold out the money in exchange for the reforms, and the localities will need to kind of take it over long term. But, the idea, the way they did with the D.C. Control Board, is then you hand over a system that is working much better and get those
right, and
reforms in place so that it does operate better.
And then you're able to turn it back to local control. That makes sense. All right, I've got just under 2 minutes. You put new legislation in to deal with this sexual harassment situation we've got going on in the House of Representatives. In a minute and a half, can you share that with our audience, Barbara?
Yeah, well, we have legislation on mandatory training. That's already in place. That was on my bill, but we're also working on major reform legislation that will, first of all, no taxpayer money and going forward at all, And then the taxpayer, now there's another bill that I support, that no taxpayer money that was expended in the past, that we will expose that, put that out to the public, and ask those people to pay it back. And then we also need to have a victim's advocate and a victim's protection sort of as part of the system so that victims feel free to come forward. But mostly we want to make sure that we have a zero tolerance so that we won't be seeing this in the workplace here or elsewhere, because we're looking certainly beyond Congress. You've seen it in the media, in Hollywood, and we've just had a lot of women come forward to talk about these things. I think we need to take it very seriously, whether it's Matt Lauer or Roger Ailes or, you see people, Harvey Weinstein. And actually in the tax bill, I should point out, I had introduced this, people in the Senate had also introduced a provision to not allow businesses like Harvey Weinstein to take a tax deduction for sexual harassment payouts. So we don't want the public paying, through the tax system for Harvey Weinstein's payouts on sexual harassment, and we certainly don't want the public to be paying for anything dealing with Congress.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. We're out of time. I want to thank House Member Barbara Comstock, Republican, 10th District of Virginia, for being with us. Barbara, a very Merry Christmas to you and your family and all of your extended family as well. And thanks for sharing your thoughts with us today. Thank you so much.
Great. And Merry Christmas to you and to all your listeners, and a very Happy New Year.
More information, you can go to comstock.house.gov.